First, fresh from the Black Sea Security Forum in Odessa, my next guest has some choice words on what Australia should be doing in the face of significant global pressure, particularly around our region, of course, but in places like Ukraine. I'm pleased to say former Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott, joins me in Melbourne on the desk, live sighting. You've been away a lot. Hey, I want to start with defence spending if I can, Tony, because the Shangri-La dialogue, really tough comments from the US Defence Secretary, basically telling Australia, you're not pulling your weight. We know that the UK Prime Minister, a Labor Prime Minister, has increased their spending. A bit of tea and sympathy from Richard Marles when he was there. He gets back to Australia and our Prime Minister slaps him down and says that's not needed. And when asked a question today, actually, they said, the Prime Minister said, well, don't you know, I mean, Britain's in a completely different area of the world. That's right. They're a long way from China and we're next door.
Exactly right. Look, we do have to spend a lot more on defence. We are, as I've said before, Peter, we are sleepwalking through lotus land to disaster as things stand. We've got to appreciate that the world is getting much more dangerous. It's becoming more dangerous by the day. Communist China, Fascist Russia and Islamist Iran are in an alliance of convenience, united only by hatred of the West. It's no accident that the Putin attack on Ukraine happened just a few days after the No Limits alliance signed between Communist China and Fascist Russia. So we in this country do need to wake up to ourselves. And frankly, if we want the American alliance to survive, we have got to be a much better ally than we look right now.
It feels like the PM sort of defunding our capability in the hope that if things got crook, we're just not going to get asked to get involved.
We will certainly be asked. The question is, will we be able to respond? And I think a foretaste of what's to come was the current government's response to the request that came in about 18 months ago for a frigate for the Red Sea. Now, we said that we don't actually have a frigate to send because they're all needed closer to home. Well, I happened to be looking out my office window that day and there were 5 frigates and destroyers tied up at Garden Island. So they weren't doing anything. And frankly,
he didn't want to be involved.
And frankly, at least one of them should have been in the Red Sea. I think there's a quasi-pacifist element to this government. And rather than say no to the Americans, they'd prefer to say we can't. And that's what they're doing. They are steadily winding down the actual fighting capability of our armed forces.
Well, someone who, in a country that had no choice in the matter was Ukraine when its border was crossed again by Russia. I know you've been there 3 times since the war began. Good on you, because it's not like the old days when you go in with armed sort of security. You're going in there as a civilian who cares about the country. How's the mood? How are they going? We saw that drone strike. It's almost like this poor little country has got better military capability than we have here.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Peter, because the Ukrainians have become world experts in drone warfare. And as we are discovering, the actual battle space is changing by the day at the moment as different drone techniques become developed. And there's really far more that they could teach us right now than that we could teach them. I mean, we have our infantry trainers in Britain helping the Ukrainian infantry, but in terms of where warfare is really at right now, well, there are lessons every day on the Ukrainian battle space, and this is where, frankly, we should have some of our people not as combatants, but certainly as very close students of exactly what's going on.
Just quickly, I want to move on to the Liberal Party, but have they got their tanks yet? We promised the tanks, what, 2 years ago? They got their tanks?
It wasn't. It was sometime last year, and I'm told that they are on the way.
We're posting them, are we?
Yes, it's sea-mail. I suppose they're too heavy to go by air. But no, they're promised, but as yet undelivered.
All right, talk to me about the Liberal Party, because you know what it's like to 4 leaders in 3 years when you became the leader in 2009. I think one of the criticisms of Peter Dutton, who's a very good man, is that there wasn't enough internal debate. And, you know, you've got the South Australian Liberals now saying we've got to dump net zero. I think that's going to be something other divisions will vote on as well. You've certainly got that push inside the National Party, not a declared position yet. You've got a debate about nuclear. You know what it's like to be there when everyone's a bit broken-hearted and demoralised. What would your advice be?
Well, you've got to know what you stand for, and then you've got to go out and argue for it in the community. And the problem with my side, our side of politics, if you like, is that there has been a deficit of conviction, of courage, and perhaps even of character, because we just have not been sufficiently up for the fight. Now, I agree with you, Peter. I think that Peter Dutton is a very decent human being, and he gave it his very, very best shot. But unfortunately, we didn't oppose the bad things that the government is doing strongly enough, and we didn't have enough of a program of our own to substitute, because I guess the two questions that people ask going into an election is, A, does the government deserve to be re-elected? And I think they'd clearly said no at Christmas time.
Yeah,
and B, is the opposition ready for government? And we weren't able to persuade them.
So just quickly, you don't sign up to the theory put around yet again. We've got to get closer to the middle. We've got to hug the left in order to win.
The job of an opposition is to be a clear and strong alternative, not to be a weak echo of a bad government.
Righto, we'll leave it there. You might know what you're talking about. Tony Abbott, thank you.